Obviously, every year around this time, as we get into NFL training camp, players see a ton of hype and we get a lot of good news about young guys that are getting into the NFL, trying to take roles, trying to earn jobs on an NFL roster. And as a result of that, oftentimes we don't think about the players that can potentially lose roles and lose jobs at the NFL level as well if those players do perform the way that they want to. Now, that said, I am going to talk to you guys today about 4 veteran running backs that I do think could lose some potential role in their NFL offenses, maybe see their dynasty value decrease, or at least present the argument as to why that could potentially happen for them, and then maybe give you guys some other things to think about in regards to all of that. But let's not waste any time. Let's hop right into today's video and let's talk about our first running back, and that is going to be Isiah Pacheco for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, last year for the Chiefs, he obviously opened the year with a massive volume for the Kansas City Chiefs. He was seeing 42% of the total team rushes and the targets before he had an injury in week 2 of the fantasy football season. Now, after that injury, he did miss most of the year. He did lose his spot in that Super Bowl run in the NFL playoffs to Kareem Hunt. It did seem like they just didn't trust Pacheco to get back. Now, he was still working back from an injury as well, so maybe not so much them not trusting the talent of Pacheco, but they definitely didn't trust his body to go into the most valuable games and try and get them some rushing yards and some rushing touchdowns and things like that. So they went to Kareem Hunt. That is something to think about as Isiah Pacheco enters a contract year here in 2025. Obviously, a former 7th-round pick himself and has no long-term ties at the moment to Kansas City. And he does have some added competition in this backfield with another 7th-round running back in Brashard Smith. So that is a player who is a converted slot wide receiver, now playing the running back position. And we've already been seeing him get used on the first team offense in NFL training camp. He's being used out of the backfield like a receiver, and he is leaning into those wide receiver traits that he had as a former wide receiver in college. And they're starting to kind of use him similarly to how they used Jerick McKinnon in 2022 when he was a league winner. And that's kind of worrisome for Isiah Pacheco if he loses some of the receiving stuff and some of the groundwork as well to Kareem Hunt. So this is something to pay attention to. I still think Isiah Pacheco early on in the year probably projects to be a 15-plus touch type of guy in this offense that we do expect to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. But it is worth noting that his grip on this job is very fragile. And a guy we thought was a volume kind of bell cow type of running back is maybe no longer that for fantasy football. So he's going to have to hold off guys like Brashard Smith and even Kareem Hunt, Elijah Mitchell, these other names in the backfield in training camp. And even if he's successful at holding them off in training camp, he has to hold them off throughout the season as well, because he has an opportunity here to potentially get phased out as those guys get a little bit more involved. Maybe not phased out completely. That's the wrong set of words to use there, but just see less of the volume that we saw as he kind of goes into 2026 as a free agent. The Chiefs could be looking at Brashard Smith or some of these other guys and say, hey, let's get them a little bit more run because they might be the future and Pacheco is not. Now, another running back we can talk about is Travis Etienne, the running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He is a player that saw a significant fall off in 2024. He went from being a top 3 fantasy running back in 2023 to major bust in 2024. Like I said, averaged 3.7 yards per carry on a very bad team and a bad offense overall. I think this is a player who is facing some real competition now in his backfield. You add Tank Bigsby, who's getting a ton of buzz in NFL training camp, obviously had a decent year last year, kind of emerging after a bad rookie season. And then you add in rookie Bhayshul Tuten, who was a 4th-round pick by this new regime. Now, the new GM, the new coaching staff, all of these guys were not involved in the drafting of Travis Etienne. So I think he kind of has to re-earn his spot here as the RB1 in this offense. And all of the camp reports right now are suggesting that Tank Bigsby looks like the best back here. He's one of the most efficient backs here last year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we know that Liam Cohen likes to reward efficiency in his backfields as well. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on. As Etienne also enters the final year of his contract, he's going to be fighting for snaps in a very messy 3-man backfield. And I think his dynasty value could tank even further if he loses this job either in training camp or in week 1 and doesn't secure those touches going into the NFL season, because a lot of people are banking on Travis Etienne to kind of bounce back here in 2025. And if he doesn't, his time in Jacksonville may be wraps, and it may be time to move on to a new NFL roster. Speaking of running backs that have moved on to a new NFL roster, let's go to Najee Harris, the running back for the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Najee Harris did see a bounce back in 2024 with some of the efficiency numbers. He did post career bests in broken tackles. He had more chunk plays. He did post career bests in basically all of his efficiency metrics. He had more broken tackles than he's ever had, and he had more chunk plays than he's ever had before as well. But even though he's been a durable, dependable type of playmaker for an NFL team. And he's the only running back with 1,000 rushing yards in each of the last 4 seasons. Yes, that's a true fact. Najee Harris, the only running back in the NFL with 1,000 or more rushing yards in each of the last 4 years. He's now 27 years old, and he's stuck behind Omarion Hampton, a first-round running back in a Greg Roman offense that wants to run the football. Now, that's not necessarily the worst part. I did think that Najee Harris was going to be involved early on in the NFL season, but a firework accident has caused what they are calling a superficial eye injury, and now they've placed Najee Harris on the NFI list with very limited information, and there is no clear timeline as to when Najee Harris is going to get back on the football field, either in training camp or even if he's going to be available for week 1. Now, obviously, when you're competing with a first-round running back like Omarion Hampton, who is super talented, any missed time is going to be detrimental for your chances at getting touches, and there's a real chance here that Hampton, without the competition of Najee Harris, goes into training camp, wins the job, runs away with it, and then by the time Najee's back on the football field, if he gets back on the football field, doesn't even get involved into the offense because they're just so confident in Omarion Hampton. And I worry that if he misses a ton of time and he's not ready by week 1, that minimal value that Najee Harris already had in fantasy football leagues, it's not like he was really a super valuable asset in the first place. That minimal value that he had could just completely vanish, and he would be damn near untradeable on most of your fantasy football rosters. And now my last and final player that I want to talk about here, it is going to be Austin Ekeler, running back for the Washington Commanders. Now, he had a very good bounce back year as well in 2024. He averaged 6.5 yards per touch, and that was one of the most efficient backs on very limited volume there for the Washington Commanders. Now, he was very productive early on. He averaged 10.7 fantasy points per game on just 10 touches per game for the Commanders. And that was all before he missed the final 2 months of the NFL season with a concussion. Now, that was obviously concerning. You don't like to see guys miss a ton of time like that with concussions, especially at Austin Ekeler's age. It's not like the age has anything to do with the concussions, but it's just harder to get back on the football field when you're 30 plus years old at the running back position. But he's back for one more year. He's on a very incentive-heavy deal, but he does have rookie running back Jacory Croskey-Merritt, who is turning heads in NFL training camp right now and knocking on the door for some potential opportunity as a rookie. Now, Croskey-Merritt, he is earning praise from both his head coach, Dan Quinn, and his running back coach, Anthony Lynn, who both said that he can provide some very strong pass catching ability for this offense and some between the tackles work for this team as well. Croskey-Merritt has been a favorite of mine, and I think the opportunity is knocking for him. If you ask some of the beat reporters there in Washington what they think of Jacory, they think he's going to be carving out a role as soon as this year in his rookie season, and he's not your typical 7th-round running back. He was a guy who kind of fell in the NFL draft because of some eligibility concerns from college. But at the end of the day, this is a player that could very well eat into Ekeler's change of pace duties by earning some of that pass catching and that between the tackles work. Now, obviously for Austin Ekeler at 30 years old, anytime you lose touches, that could be a death blow for you as far as Dynasty fantasy football values, because if Austin Ekeler gets less and less involved and he's 30, 31 years old, people just aren't going to care for him in your Dynasty fantasy football leagues, and they might not have even cared about him even before JCM started breaking out. But the reality is he could lose pretty much all the rest of what his Dynasty value was if JCM starts taking some of his lunch money. All right, folks, so there you have it. That is 4 running backs that I think can lose some value or have some risk in NFL training camp. Just because we've talked about some of the risk in today's video doesn't mean that that is guaranteed to happen. Obviously, anytime during this time of the year, every rookie looks great. We have to kind of weed through some of that and make sure we see what actually does happen. So there's still lots of football to play before we have anything here that's concrete, but that is the risk. And those are some of the players that I do think possess some of the most risk at the running back position. So hopefully you liked today's video. If you do, let me know in the comments down below. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and do all of that good stuff here for the Dynasty Nerds channel. Want to keep this thing growing. I appreciate you guys being a part of it, but I have nothing else for you guys today. I'll see you on our next episode. Till then, peace out.